Getting into a bad matchup in top lane sucks. You get harassed for every CS as a melee champion, then you get ganked or tower dove all the time. It can feel absolutely awful to play. Now, we've made guides in the past about dealing with these types of matchups. With fundamentals, you can come out on top regardless. But that's with our challenger expert smurfing versus gold or platinum players. There is such a skill difference there that it's hard to believe that you can do that all the time yourself. So, how about this? What if we do the complete opposite? What if we put someone worse than their opponent, have them be counterpicked on top of that, and still come out ahead with easy skill-capped fundamentals? And that's precisely what we're going to do today. On one side, we'll be watching Someday, one of the best top laners that North America has had for a very long time, and right now, he's try-hard practicing to do his best at Worlds, so he'll be playing Aatrox. So far, this champion has a 96% pick and ban presence at Worlds with a 70% win rate to boot. It's fair to say that the champion is a bit decent at the moment. On the other side, we have Hector. Right now, he's hard at work playing the bare minimum he can get away with since he's busy feeding his WoW addiction. Not only that, but he's a fill player who doesn't specialize in top versus someone much better than him. And to make matters worse, Hector will be Garen, the most Season 1 champion that you can probably think of. This matchup is absolutely unplayable for Garen early on. There's almost nothing that he can do versus a good Aatrox, which this one is. But what we're going to see today is Hector maneuvering his way past this horrible laning phase and eventually giving himself opportunities to solo kill Aatrox once the game goes on. And he'll do it all with super easy tips that we cover all the time at Skill Capped. So let's find out how. As the lane begins, you can already see Someday wanting to play aggressively. He's hitting the wave for a small minion lead and preparing to trade.
It's very good that he queued me there, honestly. His Q is down, so I'm going to walk up while the CS is getting low. But it's very nice that he queued there because he hit the wave, and now look how much faster it's pushing into me.
Those are two key concepts that we constantly teach that you really need to learn. So listen up. The first is simple. When you're in a bad matchup, you can often walk up for CS when your opponent also has to last hit, like so. This way, you take no damage in response. However, as Hector stated, this was especially good because Aatrox's Q was down. If your opponent still has their spell up, you need to weigh how much of a threat this is before walking up. The second point he made is also very relevant in many matchups. As he mentioned, he was very happy Aatrox queued the wave to try and trade. If you are going to eat an AoE ability to get a CS, try to stand in your own wave as you walk up to last hit. Although you'll take damage, this will be good for you. Ultimately, you'll be denied less CS in the long run since the wave will more quickly push into your tower where you can more safely farm it. Of course, that relies on your ability to last hit under tower when the wave does get to you. As you can see, the wave pushed quite quickly into Hector as predicted. But tragically, it would not be a guide featuring him unless we have to stomach some truly disgusting gameplay from time to time. Look at how many easy last hits he's missing here. Guys, if this WoW addict can get Challenger, so can you. We're just saying.
You know, I actually don't think he's playing that well. I think I'm just playing absolutely atrocious. He's not really zoning me. All of the minions I've missed have just been me being awful. Now he's doing something smart. He's letting the wave bounce back into him. This is kind of what I wanted him to do earlier, because now I have to walk into him, right?
Hector knows that here is where the trouble really begins. As any top main knows, things are usually bearable, that is until the wave is pushing away from you. So now what? What you do depends on how bad your matchup actually is. For example, let's say that you don't win 1v1, but you do have the advantage with a bigger wave. Then you'd want to build up a big slow push, crash, and then base or something. This is a very simple way of getting out of lane, even when you lose a straight up 1v1. But there are definitely a ton of truly horrible matchups in top lane where you can't win even with the bigger wave. So what do you do if your opponent just permanently freezes, denying you and making it impossible for you to ever walk up again? Technically, there is literally nothing that you can do on your own. You would ideally call for your jungler to help you crash the wave and reset, but that isn't possible here. So Hector needs to somehow bait Someday into pushing the wave back into him. One tactic that you can do is the following, similar to what we've already talked about. You want to bait your opponent with a juicy trade, so they hopefully damage the wave while fighting you. Notice this subtle but very important move during this trade by Hector. He moves toward the right as Someday is harassing him to bait the Q2 to hit the wave 2 and dodges it at the same time. This was genuinely a great move on his part, as Hector's own wave got heavily damaged in the process. This wave may not be fast pushing into him, but at least it's not pushing away anymore, so things are stable again for the moment. And by the way, you'll notice how there are tons of little things that anyone can do that Hector is doing to get advantages versus a player like Someday, and it's working. It's lessons like these which we produce with players like Hector, resulting in the most useful guides for League of Legends on the internet over at Skillcapped. Be sure to check out our huge catalog of premium courses, including our brand new comprehensive trading course that's sure to take your gameplay to the next level. And if it doesn't, well, we're the only service to offer skill insurance. Don't climb at least 5 divisions when using Skillcapped, then claim a refund. Check us out after this. Anyway, getting back into the guide, after Hector's bait to get the wave pushed back to him, he can just sustain back up while he concedes a few CS. And if you're wondering if this only works because he's Garen and has a lot of out-of-combat sustain, remember that you'd likely be running teleport on most other champions when you're in a bad matchup, and you could simply sustain back up that way if needed. Anyway, here are Hector's current thoughts.
I think it's unironically okay for me to go down like 50 CS to Slane. I have scaling runes. I'm pretty sure Someday strikes me as a person who would run aggressive runes. I outscale him, in my opinion. So it's okay to go down 50 CS.
Now, that is some Omega copium that Garen outscales Aatrox, even with better resolve runes later, but it's what he believes, so let's just let him be him. But his point about going down 50 CS is actually quite good. This is a mindset Hector has shared with us quite a lot ever since his 0 CS challenge, for those of you who remember that. The goal of that challenge was to show that the reason players lose so many bad matchups is because they tunnel vision way too much on getting every single CS and end up losing even harder for it. But if you just soak XP and concede last hits, you at least have a fighting chance later on, since you'll be even in levels with your opponent. Of course, this does have downsides. Because Hector has to play so safe, Someday has complete control over waves and can permanently crash waves into Hector's tower, which allows him to take a free base. Now, here's where Someday does something that will put a lot of pressure. Hector knows that he's being greedy, not running teleport, and that a good player can and will exploit that. So, look at how he hovers his camera over the enemy tower to see if Someday is teleporting back. Now, Hector either has to take a bad base, losing a full wave and turret plates, or stick around at a massive item disadvantage.
I don't have a good base, so I'd rather just stick around.
So unfortunately, due to the CSing incident that we're all still trying to wash out of our eyes, Hector can't afford anything too good here. If he had 1100 gold, it could be worth to base here and buy his Zerker Greaves. That's because this is a cannon wave, which will take Aatrox a bit of time to crash, making it so that Hector loses less overall farm than usual, even if he takes a bad base timing. But like he said, his gold total was bad. So thankfully, due to his foresight to look at the tower and scout teleport, he knew that he could hide in this brush to deny information. This might make Someday think that Hector has recalled, causing him to fast push this wave. Once again, this is exactly what Hector wants, for Someday to spam shove waves so that he can farm safely at his tower. Sadly, things are going to continue as they have been, but worse than before. Now that Someday has an item advantage on top of being stronger in the matchup, Hector is definitely feeling the pressure of the constant harass even under his own tower. He's beginning to take a little bit of chip damage every time Aatrox crashes the wave. And then things take a turn for the worse as his kindred is killed near Krugs while this is happening. This is pretty awful as he predicts he's about to get dove. To get confirmation, he wards over the wall. Remember that when being tower dove, you almost always want to position here for 2 reasons. This makes your opponents have to dive really deep at your tower to kill you, but you also get the small chance that your opponents misclick the tower instead of you during the dive. This is especially useful in lower elo brackets where people don't use attack champions only. But thankfully, as they dive, Hector's Galio comes to the rescue. He uses this momentary chaos while everyone retreats to flash onto the isolated Aatrox, finishing him off with a very clean Garen combo. And just like that, he salvages a situation that looked doomed into a positive one. Now, here's where people might think, well, Hector just got lucky. His opponents botched the dive, and he got help from his mid laner, which would never happen in low elo. This is the main point that we want to address in this guide. Remember that Hector's main focus this entire laning phase was staying healthy. He still had a good chunk of HP and had his health potion saved the entire time on top of that. Where so many players go wrong is that they aren't patient and allow themselves to be bullied around far too much. Most players in Hector's shoes this game versus Someday would have been far lower on health and probably been down in levels when this dive happened. Therefore, even with the exact same circumstances, they would have just died instantly. It wouldn't have helped them at all. The entire goal of conceding CS and preserving health is so that you can take advantage of the random opportunities that you will be presented. Sometimes it'll be your opponents who misdive you, allowing you to salvage a bad lane, or your jungler will come and help you as you're being spam shoved in. But none of that can happen if you're losing so hard that you can't be helped. If there's one lesson that you take from this guide, it should be this. You need to give yourself the opportunity to get lucky. Otherwise, you'll always lose the coin flip in solo queue. But this lane isn't over just yet, so let's keep going.
So he has no teleport, so I can probably push this out. I need to wait, so I'm going to hide here. Maybe, I don't know if they saw me, but I don't want Viego to hold the wave. Maybe Someday is smart and he's spam pinging hold the wave. So I just wanted to hide there and wait for Viego to leave before I come out.
This is definitely something that you should never worry about in lower elos. Your opponents aren't smart enough for it, but you should learn to try and call for it anyway. Stopping Hector's base here by calling your Viego would have been a really great call if you were the Aatrox this game. Anyway, once they're both back in lane, the matchup still looks absolutely unplayable. Garen has no way to trade early versus an Aatrox who actually knows how to space. So Hector is still on the back foot despite that previous kill. Hector goes to take Krugs and makes a sad observation.
Let's look at minion strength. Oh, it's actually annoying. My own wave is bigger, so it's actually going to freeze towards him.
This is information that not a lot of players use, but we've definitely covered it in our minion guides before, since it can help you to make better decisions. See how he clicked a minion from both waves. You want to look at the top left where there's these numbers. One wave will have 0%, and the other will maybe have something like this 2%. This means that Hector's wave is buffed and is stronger than Aatrox's wave. The waves were colliding in a neutral state. Typically it'd be a coin flip for which way the wave would push, but due to this buff, Hector is 100% certain that it will push toward Aatrox if the waves are left alone. If you don't understand where this buff comes from, it's pretty simple. Whichever team has an overall level lead will get the stronger minion waves. Since Hector's bot lane is crushing the game, he has to deal with this weird consequence. Thankfully, Someday didn't hold that freeze all that well, so Hector did come back for this wave after doing Krugs. But the problem is going to persist, unfortunately. Although he was able to farm this wave due to Aatrox's small mistake, he's not going to let that happen again.
Nice. Is my wave... It's unfortunate that my team is winning, because my wave is... Yeah, he can freeze this very easily. I might just... Kind of grief to do Raptors, but I might just go do them. If he's gonna long-term freeze like this, I can just kind of like trade with jungle camps. And I don't think my Kindred's gonna be like too mad if I take camps while she's doing this.
You have to be a skill-capped employee to have the audacity to complain about having the better team. That being said, this is a smart adaptation due to this annoying problem that he is facing. Now, keep in mind, he's doing this because Garen has pretty solid jungle clearing with his E. However, if you know that the wave is pushing away from you, then you should think about what your own champion can potentially do if you can't stay in lane. For example, if you're playing something that can roam pretty well, you could use this time to roam mid instead or something. What you do with this time where you leave lane just depends on which type of champion you're playing. But anyway, as you can see, Hector easily predicted what's happening with the wave. Even though Someday is sometimes hitting the wave to last hit, it's still freezing away from Hector due to the annoying minion buff. This means that once again, he has to fall back on that previous strategy that we talked about. He initiates a trade, but fights in his own wave so that Aatrox's Q will weaken it. Sure, he took a lot of damage, but at least now there's a chance that he'll be able to play the game in the near future. Since it's no longer freezing away, he stops trading completely and begins preserving his health as much as possible, even if it means conceding CS, as we have discussed. Now, as he's clearing the wave, he notices both his Draven and Galio making their way up top, and you can immediately see his gameplay shift. as he goes very aggressively onto Aatrox, which he hasn't done before. With proper map awareness, the engage goes down swimmingly, and his team walks away with 3 kills to none, and that basically seals the game for his team. While Hector has already survived this lane and the game is won, there's still one more good play that we can analyze, so let's fast forward to when both players are down in bottom now. Sadly, as you can see, Hector is still on the receiving end of Aatrox's wrath. The matchup really is that bad. Surely he'll be outscaling soon though, right?
Yeah, just harass me for free.
Hector's had enough and is finally going to make a solo play to deal with the frustrations that he's had all game long. A bit later,
I can't take that ward. I really want to fight him in this wave. I don't want him to see me hit 11. I want to like E onto him.
He didn't get to finish his thought, so we'll explain what he meant. He wanted to fight Aatrox in this wave, and while he does damage with his E, he kills the 3 casters, hits level 11, and executes him with his rank 2 ultimate. But this minion was dying before Aatrox was in position, which would reveal the level spike. If that happened, Aatrox would instinctively play safe, which would make Hector miss out on the single kill opportunity that he's had all game. So he gives up yet another CS to hide in the brush instead, and levels up in the Fog of War. Someday, still confident that he can abuse the matchup, walks forward and gets caught off guard by Hector's big power spike. And with that simple trick, Hector finally gets to release a bit of that rage over how annoying this game has been.
Sit.
And just like that, he survived and won a completely unplayable matchup versus a player who is significantly better than he is, doing for the most part very simple stuff. There's not some secret trick to winning every lane no matter what. You will be in terrible situations constantly in solo queue, especially as a top laner. But using these super simple tactics that we cover all the time at Skill Capped, it can give you a fighting chance in every single game, no matter how bad the matchup is. Being in a bad matchup is about giving yourself the highest percentage chance of something going right, even if it's on the lower end of the spectrum, which Hector did throughout the entire game. That's how he was able to find opportunities to win and didn't just flop instantly versus an insanely good player on an insanely powerful champion. Anyway, we hope that you all enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time.